Fully remote working is something only a few companies did until earlier this year. Today I'm going to be discussing the impact this has had on the tech industry and how it will change our lives forever. For those who don't know me, I've been a software engineer for over 2 decades, and here I share some of my experience and perspectives on the tech industry. So let's talk about remote work. For most of my career I've worked in offices, small offices, big offices, but mostly open plan offices. This has included working in the UK, Canada and Japan. I worked remotely also for a company in the US, in Palo Alto. For my previous company I worked from home for a few days, but the experience wasn't that great. It would go as little something like this. I joined the meeting on time, but no one's on the call. After a few minutes I'd be like, "Hi there, is anyone coming to the meeting? I'm on Zoom." The response would be, "Yeah, we're having a few technical difficulties." Now, I live in Canada, my parents live in the UK, so I'm used to technical difficulties on a regular basis. But the fact that the room on the other end is full of engineers seems to make no difference at all. Once the call is set up though, we go for a range of audio quality from good to can't quite hear what the person is saying to is anyone still there? Often they can't even hear you informing them that you can't hear them. You're constantly balancing this, interrupting them with letting the meeting actually flow. And that hesitation and wanting the meeting to continue is a thing that actually perpetuates this cycle of poor experience, which will make the next person have a poor experience as well. At the end of the meeting, you can hear everyone patting themselves on the back and saying what a good meeting that was. And then the last person leaving the room looks at the computer and says, "Phil, are you still there? Anyway, hanging up now. Okay, bye." The solution to this problem is to become a remote-first organization, where the primary focus is being on remote. It definitely helps if it's physically weighted that way, with more people being remote than in the office, but mostly it's a frame of mind. The idea of remote first is not new. Companies like HashiCorp, CircleCI, InVision, SocialText and WordPress have been doing it for a long time successfully. The idea isn't that these people over here are remote and these people over here are in the office. No, we're all remote because we're remote first. So these people are in the office, they're also remote. They just happen to be in an office altogether. One fast-track way to have this work effectively in a communal office is have everyone dial in up from their own laptop with their own headset and their own camera. This levels the playing field. Although, if you're in a loud, noisy, crowded office, this can be difficult, but good use of the mute button can help a lot. Here's a tip. In Zoom, you can press the space bar to quickly unmute. Think of it like a walkie-talkie. Just don't say over after everything you say. Let's put aside for the fact that most of us have been forced into remote work, and let's look at some of the benefits. One big plus is the ability to hire people who want to work in a different city or a different country, or just want to be remote full-time. There's a lot of financial benefits to the company too, or it might just be the case that you can find good people more quickly by not just limiting your search to just your local neighborhood. This was definitely the case when I was trying to hire a platform team lead last year. It was through these hiring struggles and talking to other companies that had already gone remote first that we started to consider what it would take to become a remote first company. But then the world changed. From Monday, we're all working remote. Most of the working world that had the ability to pick up their laptop and work from home heard this phrase last year. The pandemic had forced our hand. Companies like mine that were struggling to make the leap were pushed off the ledge and suddenly found that it wasn't so hard. And thanks to a small army of folks shipping out desks, chairs and monitors, we were able to redefine ourselves as a remote first company. Sure, I miss whiteboards, but soon found that you could convey a picture with simply 1,000 words, and often less. Let's look at some of the downsides. Some people are enjoying remote work less than others. For instance, if you're single or you live with your partner in a small studio apartment that you have to expose on Zoom several times a day, that's not going to be a lot of fun. But there are other downsides that might not be so obvious, and we might not see the direct correlation about how they're going to affect us in the long term. Let's look at the impact, for instance, on Silicon Valley. Jason Calacanis is a prolific angel investor and has invested in more than 200 companies. In his words, commercial real estate is going to collapse. Here he is back in May on CNBC.
100% of companies learning how to work remote, perfectly. What people have figured out is this 10% of my workforce is crushing it. This 10% is phoning it in. I'm going to cut that 10%. I'm going to have a more efficient company, and I'm going to get rid of my second or third highest cost, which is facilities and real estate. I'm going to let everybody work from home. And then instead of trying to hire somebody in Silicon Valley, which is about a $40,000 a year premium, because a one-bedroom apartment here is $4,000 in private school, and you get the idea. We're going to be able to say, or what they're going to say is, hire anybody who's great wherever they are, because we know how to manage these people. And it used to be that the old folks, Gen Xers and boomers just didn't know how to manage people unless they could see them. Now everybody in the last 8 weeks has gotten a crash course in this. They know how to manage people. And what's going to happen is then you can hire anybody around the globe to fill a position, which means you fill the position 5 times faster. The person stays 3 or 4 times longer. You don't have turnover, and you get them at a 30% lower price. So this collapse that I'm seeing where companies are laying off tons of people, the upside to this is the way out of the recovery is going to be remote work. It's going to be people having more efficient companies, wildly efficient companies. In fact, like Twitter spends a lot of money on those buildings and pays a lot of tax to San Francisco, and they're out. And San Francisco is going to get demolished. The tax basis is going to get crushed, and the commercial real estate is going to collapse.
It's interesting.
And I'm seeing this every day in my portfolio of 250 companies I've invested in the last decade.
If remote work is eating the world, is this good for engineers in the long run? It depends on who you are and where you are. In a recent post by Sean Blanda, he considers whether engineers in centralized tech hubs think of themselves as more valuable than engineers in other areas of the world. He writes, "When you, the American worker, share this belief, you are being blinded by an erroneous belief in American exceptionalism. When your company goes all remote, it's starting a clock that ends in you eventually competing with the global talent market, especially if you travel and visas continue to be restricted by the federal government." As Sean points out, you and your neighborhood are not special. Sure, some great companies might have come from that area. You might go to meetups, might know some great engineers in the area that you've learned from. But ultimately, great engineers exist everywhere in the world. Anywhere that the internet can reach, at least. As jobs go remote, real estate prices drop, as do salaries and the status of tech hubs. So what do you think? Do you think we'll all go back to normal at some point in the future? Will the pool of talented engineers be spread thinner around the world? Will this lower the cost of hiring engineers, and hence your salary? Leave a comment down below and click like if you think this video will be useful to someone else. Thanks for watching.
And there were people who were telling us this. There were small companies like WordPress or InVision who had gone 100% remote, and they kept telling everybody, this is the greatest thing ever. But, people, paradigms, don't change. People have to from the last paradigm, have to either get dragged kicking and screaming in a crisis, or they have to die. That's the way the paradigm shift changes. Well, here we have a crisis that's forcing that paradigm shift. And a lot of the top talent now realizes this. And they're saying, why would I be in a high tax state? Why would I pay that amount to not own a home and own a tiny little apartment? I'm going to Austin. I'm going to Miami. I'm going to Kyoto.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like down below.
Hey, what are you doing?